Hey everyone, welcome back to the workshop. Artisan Pirate here, and in today's fun scroll saw project video, we're going to be making another creative Halloween design for Halloween 2025. Halloween is fast approaching for that spooky and spectacular day that I look forward to each and every year. I've already got the patterns photocopied to their full size and attached to our material with clear packing tape, and everything is sitting on the table saw in front of the camera. And the design we're going to be making and bringing to life visually today comes from an older issue of Scroll Saw Woodworking and Crafts magazine by Fox Chapel Publishing, Fall 2024, issue 96 to be precise. We've done some other designs out of this issue here. It's packed with a bunch of creative designs, and the design in question begins on page 64, and it says, Halloween tree, spooky ornaments embellish this quirky decoration by Miss Sue May, and the one featured in the magazine that I will show you was cut by Mr. Joe. So thank you guys for the beautiful and creative Halloween and seasonal design. There you see the article, and on the following page there is a visual representation of what we are going to be making. You can see it's a nice little spooky three-dimensional Halloween tree after all of the leaves have fallen off, and it's got that spooky vibe to it. And then you cut out all of these charms here, as many or as little as you want, to add to it to give it a nice creative flair that'll easily freestand on a shelf, desk, or countertop. So really cool. Part of the pattern is on the following page that we have photocopied, and then the additional patterns are featured in the full-size pattern pull-out section, and there you see all of the charms and the other side of the tree. And one really cool thing about this project is it is a slotted design. There's no glue needed to assemble it. You can see the two slots there, one going up, one going down, so they will interlock like this. So after the Halloween season has passed, you can unlock them and it'll lay flat for you to be able to store with your seasonal items until the next Halloween season rolls around the following year. The main scroll saw work here, that is the spooky tree itself, is going to be the basic 1/4 inch material that I like to use for scroll saw woodworking projects and patterns. Keep in mind that not all 1/4 inch material runs at a true 1/4 inch in thickness, so just double check a piece of the actual material you are using on the slots or tabs on any scroll saw design that requires them, but you should do fine. We will of course take our time and let the blade do the work. And we'll stain this a nice shade of Minwax wood stain to give it some color. And then all of the ornaments are going to be made out of scrap, exotic, and hardwoods I dug out of the scrap bin and milled down on the Rikon table saw to thinness to where we could cut them out and they would look like nice little charms. We have the ghost here, and I believe we're going to stack cut all of these. Yes, we are. But I believe this material here is either ash or hickory. I thought with the ghost and that material being a lighter shade, it would be appropriate for the charm. Then we have a black cat, a spider, and a witch's boot, and we're going to stack cut those out of some pieces of walnut. We're going to use some more walnut to make the witch's hat and a spooky bat. We have got a Halloween pumpkin here and a witch flying on a broom, and this is going to be some stack cut cherry material. And then we have some more of that lighter material that I believe is either ash or hickory, and it's going to be the skull and the cross. You know, the cross plays an important part when fighting the evil vampires, and you guys know I love skulls because I am a pirate. But since everything is pretty much prepped and prepared, let's move the camera over to the drill press to drill the pilot holes required so we can get this spooky project started over at the scroll saw. And over here at the drill press, we're going to take a drill bit and drill out all of the pilot holes for internal cutting. And there's not many in each side of the tree, but then we have to drill out all of the interior cuts for the little individual Halloween badges here, as well as a pilot hole to thread a cord through to hang them on the tree by. But after all of the pilot holes are drilled, we'll head over to the Rikon scroll saw and begin scrolling. And I'm beginning with one side of the spooky Halloween tree here. And for all of the scrolling on this project, I'll be using a number 5 Ultra reverse tooth blade, and it will cut through all material we are going to be scrolling today exceptionally well with minimal chip out. And of course, a very fresh and sharp number 5 blade will simply fly through this 1/4 inch plywood I like to use. So I've got a firm grip on the piece, and I am of course taking my time and letting the blade do the work. And if you are new to scroll saw woodworking and you have a variable speed scroll saw, You could of course slow the scroll saw down when cutting out the thinner material for better control. But just going through here and getting all of the spooky faces cut out on one side of the tree, and now we are proceeding to some of the badges. And as I said in the intro, some of these badges are made out of harder material, so that makes it a slower cut over at the scroll saw, especially when I'm stack cutting like I'm doing for all of the badges here. But I want to get done with all of the interior cuts on all of the badges so I can retension the blade and just go about releasing them all from the waste wood. Didn't take long at all to cut everything out. Just be aware that there is some small and tedious cuts with some of the details on this project. And I feel like that some of the individual badges could be their own standalone scroll saw projects if you opted to enlarge them and use them for different decorative purposes other than little badges as they are intended in the project we are making and creating. But we are now releasing all of the individual badges, and I'm setting them aside on the workbench, and that's why I like having an L-shaped workbench. I can easily set stuff aside without having to keep getting up and down from the scroll saw. And little spider badges there were very tedious to cut out, but again, I'm taking my time and letting the blade do the work. If you guys would like to try this design, it's available in an older issue of Scroll Saw Woodworking and Crafts magazine by Fox Chapel Publishing, one of their older fall editions. And if you guys like what you're seeing, I would highly encourage you guys to subscribe to my channel and also follow me across all my social media feeds under the Artisan Pirate name. I'd really appreciate the support. Doing the final release cut on this side of the tree. It is just one long, continuous, and swirly style cut. Just being as loyal as I can be to the cut line. And I'm not wanting to make any sudden movements to where the piece of material could jerk away, because due to the nature and the thinness of the material, the branches could easily break. But after all of the scroll saw work is complete, we can step over to the workbench and remove the two sides of the tree from the waste wood, and we'll get our first visual of what the finished design will look like. But now it is time for sanding, and for the tree, I very carefully sanded it, both front and back side of both pieces, with 180 grit Klingspor Woodworking Shop sandpaper in the vibrating palm sander. Again, being very careful not to break any of the branches off. But once I was happy with that, I assembled it again. And then it was time to sand all of the individual badges. And for that, I'm using a high grit sandpaper in this little sanding pad I've had for years. It's got a thin piece of foam on it that allows the sandpaper to kind of contour around all of the edges when you are sanding. And I use this sanding pad all the time. Just taking my time here getting all of the pieces sanded up nice and smooth. But now I will clear coat all of the badges with Rust-Oleum clear gloss, and I really like how it made all of the grain textures of the exotic and hardwoods we used here. It made that grain texture and natural colors in the material pop real well. And then we stained the actual two pieces of the tree with a very light shade of Minwax wood stain that still allowed the natural grains and textures of that 1/4 inch plywood I like to use to stand out and shine through. And I wiped off all of the excess. And I hung both pieces on hooks to dry. Now that we are entering the cooler months, it takes a little bit longer for stuff to dry out in the workshop. But after it dried, I gave both pieces of the tree here a few coats of Rust-Oleum clear gloss, and I once again hung them on the hooks to dry. And I turned the fan on to accelerate the drying time and to circulate the air. But after all of this was done, all of the badges were dry, and it was time to put cords on all of them. And I selected 2 different colors here, a nice dark burgundy and purple. I felt that would be appropriate for the Halloween and spooky season. And I will not bore you guys with tying all of the strings onto all of the individual badges, but it seemed like it took longer to tie all of the strings on and cut them to length than it did to do all of the actual scroll saw work. But I went through and got all of the string threaded through the badges, and after everything was dry, it was time to put them on the tree for display. And once I was happy with how everything looked here, the spooky Halloween tree for Halloween was complete. And I thank you all for watching, and we'll get a closer look at the tree and all of the badges as we close the video. And here we have the completed Halloween tree with miniature ornaments cut out completely over on the scroll saw from start to finish, and it finished up spectacularly with some creative and spooky details in it. Really, really cool. Once again, showing off the scroll saw's versatility for creative and beautiful designs. All scroll saw projects do not have to be fretwork designs with hundreds upon hundreds of interior cuts. You can make beautiful and creative designs just like this over at the scroll saw with a little bit of time, practice, patience, and effort. It took me around an hour to scroll everything out completely from start to finish here. There is some small and tedious cuts in this project, but I did what I always do over at the scroll saw, and I took my time and I let the blade do the work, and I was as loyal as I could be to the cut line, and I hope that the results speak for themselves. I want to once again thank Miss Sue May and Mr. Joe for the beautiful and creative design featured in an older issue of Scroll Saw Woodworking and Crafts magazine by Fox Travel Publishing. I'll once again hold that magazine up as we close the video here, but really happy with how this project came out. I'm really happy how everything came together. Again, there is some small and fragile cuts, especially with all of the little pendant ornaments you cut out. You have the witch, you have the pumpkin, you have the cross for the vampires for fighting them, you have the skull, the witch's boot, the witch, the spider, the witch's hat, all kinds of little images associated with the spooky and Halloween season. And then the main bulk of the scroll saw work is basic 1/4-inch material that is readily available in most areas that make up the actual spooky tree, and you can see the Halloween jack-o'-lantern faces in the trunk of the tree there on both sides. And I love that because I'm not going to take it completely apart, but because it is a slotted design, you can of course take it apart once Halloween is over, and it will store flat in a storage box until the next Halloween season the following year, where you can bring it back out and proudly display it on a shelf, desk, or countertop. But I'm really pleased with how this came out. I got to use some exotic and hardwoods for the pendants and everything we used in today's video, and I'm going to hold those up because at the beginning of the video, again, I said what they were, but we're going to go back through them. We used walnut. I think that's especially cool for the black cat, the spider, the witch's hat, the bat, and the witch's boot, like I cut out here. Then we had cherry for the pumpkin and the witch flying on the broomstick. And then these pieces here, I'm unsure what they are. If you guys are familiar with that wood grain there, please let me know. It's either ash or hickory. It was a piece of material I picked up out of the free scrap bin at the hardwood store. But this lighter shade I felt lent itself to the ghost, the skull, and the cross and everything came out nice and crisp over here. And I used some seasonal colors with the cords that was in the craft room. I felt purple and burgundy would be great appropriate colors for the spooky and Halloween season. I didn't have no orange cord, or I would have used that. There was also yellow and a dark blue in the pack now that I'm looking back at it, but I think these colors here really add a nice little elegance to it. And I stained the main bulk of the scroll saw work, again the tree itself, with a very light shade of Minwax wood stain that didn't mask off the natural grain textures of the 1/4" material we used. And then for all of the pendants, we just sanded those up nice and smooth with Klingspor Woodworking Shop sandpaper, and then we just clear coated them with Rust-Oleum clear gloss. And then over the stain on the 1/4" material, we also added Rust-Oleum clear gloss, and you can hopefully see everything reflected there in the lights of the workshop. But again, this is just a really cool piece to make, and you can proudly display it again on a shelf, desk, or countertop. If you work in an office cubicle, it doesn't take up much room to sit on a desk. If you have a nice office, it would also look good on the desk. It would look cool as a little Halloween centerpiece, you know, or something like that. So options and versatility, and I want to talk about that as we talk about the pattern itself. Each of the little pendants here, I feel like, could be their own little standalone scroll saw projects if you just wanted to cut out small individual trinkets to give out on Halloween with trick-or-treaters. You know, maybe you could tape the pendants to a piece of candy to give out for trick-or-treaters, or you could enlarge them and use them in different and creative ways. The same goes with the actual tree itself. You do not have to cut out the pendants. I think the spooky tree would look good for a jewelry tree. You know, you could hang your wristbands. You guys know I wear jewelry, pirate, but you know, I like wearing the stuff and all, but it would be good for that, to hang the jewelry on. And also I feel like it would also make a cool and spooky decor for maybe a garden railroad during the Halloween season. You know, with the size of it, I don't think it would look good with HO scale or O scale model trains, but maybe the bigger G scale garden railroad trains. Cut out some of these and just place them around. It would be a great thing for the fall and autumn season, especially as we are now in the spooky season of Halloween. You guys know I love Halloween and getting to dress up as the pirate and go out and put smiles on faces each and every year. But really cool, and I think the pendants really add a creative flair to it. Once again, this design came from an older issue of Scroll Saw Woodworking and Crafts magazine by Fox Chapel Publishing. Last year, as a matter of fact, fall 2024, issue 96, and there you see the cover with the nice intricate fretwork deer on the cover. And the design that we have made and brought to life in today's video began on page 64, and they had a nice visual representation of what it could look like on the following page. So thank you guys for the beautiful and creative Halloween scroll saw project. And most of the pattern is located in the full-size pattern pull-out section. There you see one half of the tree. The other half is actually featured in the magazine. Photocopied those to full-size, and then there is each of the individual pendants. Again, I feel like all of the pendants could be their own individual stand-alone projects, especially if you wanted to make them a little bit bigger and cut them out for maybe a Halloween classroom setting, you know, for people to decorate each one in a creative and unique way. So there's always options and versatility with the scroll saw patterns and designs you come across. You can use them in a variety of ways other than the intended purpose. But in today's video, I hope that you guys picked up a tip, trick, or tidbit as we made the project as it was intended out of that older issue of Scroll Saw Woodworking and Crafts magazine by Fox Chapel Publishing. But I am definitely going to display this piece proudly throughout the spooky and autumn months. Just really happy with how it came out, and it once again shows off the versatility of what a scroll saw is capable of making. And again, a scroll saw is not a tool that takes up a large footprint out in a garage or a workshop. So hopefully today's video inspires you guys to go out and maybe try a project like this, or maybe try a project like this and use it in a different and creative way. If you do, please let me know down in the comments. I'd be eager to hear about that. But hopefully along the way from start to finish, you guys picked up a tip, trick, or tidbit, and I hope you enjoyed watching me make this project and bring it to life over here on the platform. The most tedious part of the whole project for me was threading the colored thread through all of those ornaments. It felt like to me it took longer to do that than it did to do the actual scroll saw work, just threading the blade through those small pilot holes we drilled over at the drill press. But overall, really happy with this project, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching me make it and bring it to life for a Halloween scroll saw project video. That's going to be about all for this one. If you're new to the channel, hopefully you'll click that subscribe button and follow me across all my social media feeds under the Artisan Pirate name. As always, links to contact me as well as all my social media feeds will always be linked down in the description box below these videos. That's about all for this one, and remember guys, if I can make it or do it, so can you guys. I'm the Artisan Pirate. Take care, stay spooky my friends, and I'll see you guys real soon.